July 20th, 1966, a clearing in the Laotian jungle, 60 miles from the Vietnamese border. The UH-1 Huey came down through monsoon clouds, rotors beating the elephant grass flat as the crew chief scanned the tree line. Through the downwash, a figure stepped out from the jungle's edge, waving something white and torn. The pilot radioed in, visual contact with a downed airman, preparing for standard extraction. But as the helicopter settled, the crew chief's face changed. The man stumbling toward them wasn't wearing a uniform, just shredded fabric that might have been flight gear once. His skin pulled tight over his ribs, face hollow, eyes sunk deep. He moved like someone learning to walk again after forgetting how. The medic reached down to pull him aboard and recoiled, not at what he saw, but at what he felt. 93 pounds. The figure collapsed onto the deck, and in that moment, the crew understood. This wasn't a routine rescue of a pilot shot down days ago. This was Lieutenant Dieter Dengle, a man who'd been erased from the world 7 months earlier. A ghost who'd walked out of a nightmare that wasn't supposed to exist. What the rescue crew had just witnessed was the end of the most extraordinary escape in the Vietnam War. Dengler's emergence from that jungle wasn't just survival. It was something the Pentagon had believed impossible. A successful breakout from a Pathet Lao prison camp, followed by 23 days alone in terrain that killed trained soldiers in 72 hours. 7 months earlier, June 1st, 1966, Lieutenant Dieter Dengle climbed into the cockpit of his A-1H Skyraider. Yankee Station, the floating air base in the Gulf of Tonkin. The mission briefing was routine, interdiction run over the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos, targeting supply routes feeding North Vietnamese forces. The Skyraider, a propeller-driven attack plane left over from the Korean War, had earned its reputation as a workhorse. It could carry more bombs than aircraft twice its size. Dengle had flown dozens of these missions. He understood the risks. Anti-aircraft batteries lined the trail corridors, hidden under triple canopy jungle, waiting for the sound of American engines. 38 minutes past noon, his aircraft crossed into Laotian airspace at 8,000 feet. The jungle below stretched unbroken in every direction, a green ocean broken only by limestone karsts pushing through the canopy like surfacing whales. Dengle dropped to 4,000 feet, scanning for his target coordinates. Then the instrument panel lit up. Amber warnings everywhere. Ground fire. The Skyraider shuddered as 37mm shells tore through the fuselage. Control surfaces stopped responding. Engine temperature spiked past redline. Dengle had maybe 15 seconds to decide. Ride the aircraft down or eject over hostile territory. He pulled the ejection handle. The canopy blew away in a violent explosion of plexiglass and wind. The rocket-powered seat launched him clear, acceleration crushing his spine, forcing air from his lungs. Parachute deployment came with a brutal snap that wrenched his shoulders. Then silence, broken only by the distant thump of his Skyraider hitting jungle below. He fell through layers of humid air, watching the canopy rush up to meet him. The emergency procedures he'd memorized played through his mind. Activate radio beacon, assess injuries, move away from landing site, establish defensive position, wait for rescue. The jungle canopy caught him like a net. Branches tore at his flight suit as he crashed through layers of vegetation, finally slamming into the forest floor hard enough to knock the wind from his chest. He lay still for a moment, taking inventory. Bruised ribs, maybe cracked. Deep cut on his left arm from a broken branch. Right ankle twisted but mobile. He turned on his survival radio, broadcasting his position. Static, no response. He tried again. Nothing. Either the radio was damaged or he was too deep under the canopy. Dengle grabbed his survival kit and started moving west, away from where his plane went down. Standard doctrine: evade, survive, wait for search and rescue. He made it maybe 200 meters before he heard voices. Lao dialect, closing in from multiple directions. They'd seen his parachute. They knew exactly where he was. He crouched behind a teak tree, holding his survival knife, understanding with absolute clarity that rescue wouldn't arrive before the Pathet Lao did. Within the hour, rough hands bound his wrists with rice cord. Lieutenant Dieter Dengler's journey into hell had just begun. The Pathet Lao soldiers stripped Dengle of his boots within the first hour. They took his flight suit, his survival vest, Everything except his torn undershirt and trousers. Then they started walking, prodding him forward with rifle butts whenever he slowed. His bare feet, used to the cushioned interior of flight boots, split open on sharp limestone rocks jutting through the jungle floor. By nightfall of the first day, every step left a smear of blood on the trail behind him. The march lasted 8 days. Each morning, the guards woke him before dawn, binding his hands behind his back with rough hemp rope that cut into his wrists. They fed him nothing. Water came only when they crossed streams, and even then, they gave him seconds to cup his hands and drink before jerking him forward. On the third day, they reached a village where the trail widened into a clearing. The guards shoved Dengle into the center of the village square. Villagers gathered, forming a circle around him. A guard barked orders in Lao, then struck Dengle across the face with his rifle butt. The crowd cheered. Another blow to his ribs, another to his kidneys. The beating went on forever. Each strike met with the crowd's approval until Dengle collapsed into the dirt, tasting blood and mud. This became the pattern. Every village they passed demanded its show. The guards used Dengle as proof of American weakness, a trophy to parade before the locals. Between villages, the jungle itself became the torturer. Thorns from wait-a-minute vines tore his skin. Leeches attached to his legs and arms, swelling fat with his blood. The cuts on his feet got infected, his ankles swollen and burning hot. Dengue fever hit on the 5th day, bringing waves of chills and delirium, even as jungle heat pressed down like a wet blanket. On the 7th day, climbing a ridge through dense undergrowth, Dengle heard something that made him stop despite the guard's shove from behind. English. Faint. Somewhere ahead on the trail, 2 voices, American accents, speaking in the exhausted monotone of men who'd given up hope, but still talked out of habit. The guards pushed Dengle forward, and he saw them. 2 other prisoners, just as thin, just as barefoot, faces hollow and blank. One caught Dengle's eye and gave the slightest nod. Another American. Proof he wasn't alone in this nightmare. But as they kept walking, Dengle watched the men ahead more carefully. They moved like ghosts, mechanical and defeated, eyes focused on nothing. He wondered how long they'd been captive. He wondered if survival meant becoming what they'd become, breathing corpses who walked when told and stopped when told. That thought was almost worse than dying. On the 8th day, the trail opened into a small clearing where crude bamboo structures stood in a rough rectangle. Guard towers at 2 corners, bamboo fence around the perimeter. Inside, 4 men sat motionless in the dirt, faces turned toward the new arrivals, with an expression Dengle would never forget. Not hope, not relief, just the dull recognition that their private hell had just gotten more crowded. The guards shoved Dengle toward the other prisoners and barked commands in Lao. One of the skeletal men gestured weakly toward an empty spot against the bamboo wall. Dengle collapsed there, infected feet throbbing, ribs aching from the beatings. As darkness fell, the guards came back with wooden stocks, medieval devices made from split bamboo logs with semicircular cutouts for ankles and wrists. They locked Dengle into position, legs straight, hands locked at his sides. The stocks held him rigid, couldn't shift position, couldn't swat the mosquitoes that swarmed once the sun disappeared. Sleep became impossible. Every attempt to move sent splinters deeper into raw skin. By dawn, his muscles screamed from being held still. This was life at the prison camp near Hoi Het. Each morning at first light, guards released the prisoners from stocks and handed out breakfast. A handful of uncooked rice, maybe 20 grains per man. Sometimes a few leaves or roots the guards thought were edible. The prisoners ate insects when they could find them. Beetles and grubs, the only protein in a diet designed to keep them alive, but too weak to escape. After the tiny meal, guards marched them into jungle to clear trails, hauling supplies for Pathet Lao operations deeper in the mountains. The work went on 8 to 10 hours under armed watch, guards beating anyone who slowed or stumbled. Dengle learned the camp's pecking order fast. Eugene de Bruin, an Air America pilot shot down nearly 2 years earlier, had become the camp's unofficial leader through sheer endurance. He spoke some Lao, enough to understand guard conversations and read their moods. Dwayne Martin, a U.S. Air Force helicopter pilot captured months before Dengle, kept a stubborn silence the guards saw as defiance, earning him extra beatings. The others were Fisit Intherathat and Prasit Thani from the Royal Lao Air Force, and Pasidi Indradat, a Thai contract pilot. They'd built a hidden system of communication, sharing information through gestures and whispers during brief moments when guards weren't looking. When one prisoner found an edible mushroom or caught a beetle, he passed pieces to the others in cupped palms hidden from view. These small acts became the prisoners' only weapon against despair. They kept each other's will to survive through shared defiance, reminding one another of names, families, reasons to endure another day locked in stocks. Another morning, counting rice grains on one hand. Dengle joined this silent resistance, giving whatever scraps he found, taking whatever others could spare. But as June turned into early July, Dengle understood their situation with brutal clarity. The human body can survive maybe 3 weeks without food. They were getting just enough to stretch that timeline forever, kept alive but systematically broken down. Escape needed strength they didn't have. Rescue seemed impossible. The camp deliberately chosen for how remote it was. Survival here meant accepting permanent captivity, waiting for disease or starvation or a guard's bullet to end it. Then one evening, as guards locked the prisoners into stocks, Dengle heard 2 guards arguing near the command hut. Most words were unintelligible, but certain phrases carried across the clearing. De Bruyn's expression changed. He caught Dengler's eye and made the slightest cutting motion across his throat. The guards were talking about something that required elimination. Something about moving the camp. Something about not leaving witnesses. Over the next few days, Dengle pieced together enough Lao to understand what the guards meant. The camp was moving to a new spot deeper in the mountains. The prisoners were too weak to march that far. The solution was brutally simple. Kill them before leaving. De Bruyn confirmed it through bits of conversation he'd caught. They had maybe 2 weeks, probably less. Dengle called a whispered meeting during the midday work shift when guards retreated to shade. The message was clear. They could die passively in stocks, or die trying to escape. At least the second option gave them a chance. Planning started immediately, in stolen moments and hidden glances. Dengle studied guard rotations with military precision. 7 guards total, but never more than 4 in camp at once. The others patrolled trails or went to nearby villages for supplies. Guards changed watch at odd times, but always gathered for a meal around sunset, leaving only 2 on active duty. That window, maybe 20 minutes, was their only shot. The prisoners needed weapons. During a work detail, Dengle found a rusty nail half buried in the trail. He palmed it, then spent 3 nights scratching at the bamboo pin securing his ankle stocks, testing if the old lock could be broken. It could, but it took time and silence. They debated who could actually fight. De Bruyn, after 2 years of starvation, didn't have the strength for direct combat. Viet and Prosit were willing but weak. That left Dengle, Martin, and Pisidi as the assault team. They stockpiled what little they could, a sharpened bamboo sliver, a rock that fit the palm, the rusty nail. Dengle suggested waiting for monsoon season, when heavy rains would hide sound and cut visibility. The others agreed. They watched the sky each evening, waiting for the right storm. It came on June 29, 1966. Dark clouds rolled over the mountains in the afternoon, and by evening, rain fell in sheets that turned the camp into a shallow lake. Guards huddled under the command hut's thatched roof, smoking and talking, while 2 stayed on duty near the prisoner compound. Dengle worked the nail into his stock's lock, feeling the bamboo pin shift. Martin did the same. One by one, prisoners freed themselves, moving in total silence despite the rain's roar. Dengle gave the signal. They rushed the nearest guard together, Dengle driving his shoulder into the man's chest, Martin grabbing the rifle. The guard went down hard. Pisidi seized the second guard's weapon as the man turned, too shocked to shout before a rock hit his temple. Then chaos. Prisoners ran in different directions. No coordinated plan, driven by pure survival instinct. De Bruyn hesitated at the compound's edge, looking back towards something in the guard hut. And in that moment of hesitation, he chose wrong, straight toward voices shouting in Lao. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes lighting the rain. Dengle and Martin crashed into jungle together, branches tearing their faces, bare feet slipping on mud. Behind them, the camp dissolved into screaming and gunshots. They ran till their lungs burned, till the sounds faded into jungle night and rain. Only then did they stop, gasping, and realize what they'd done. They were free. They were also completely lost. No weapons, no food, no map, in hundreds of square miles of hostile jungle with Pathet Lao patrols already coming after them. For the first week, Dengle and Martin only moved at night, navigating by stars when the canopy opened enough to see sky. They avoided trails, correctly guessing Pathet Lao patrols would search those first. During daylight, they hid in thick undergrowth, listening to jungle sounds, trying to tell wind from pursuit. They ate whatever they could find: snails pried from tree bark, roots that looked like the edible ones from survival training, insects that gave desperately needed protein. The hunger was constant, a gnawing emptiness that took over every thought. But hunger was just the beginning. The human body under extreme starvation follows a predictable pattern. After burning through glycogen in the first 72 hours, metabolism shifts to fat stores. When those run out, the body starts eating its own muscle, breaking down protein to fuel vital organs. The process is efficient and devastating. Dengler's survival training had covered basics: find water, seek shelter, signal rescuers. But nothing prepared him for week 2, when his body started consuming itself at an accelerated rate, made worse by tropical parasites, infected wounds, constant rain. His weight, already down from months of captivity, dropped below 100 pounds. Martin was no better, movements getting more mechanical, eyes distant. On the 15th day, they stumbled into a small village at the edge of a clearing. Desperation won over caution. They walked up with hands raised, trying through gestures to show they needed food. An elderly woman came out of one hut, studied them for a long moment, then went back inside. She returned with a small bundle of rice wrapped in banana leaves and a bamboo container of water. They ate slowly, savoring each grain, feeling real nutrition for the first time in weeks. The woman didn't ask questions. They left before other villagers could decide whether compassion or politics should win. 3 days later, they tried the same thing at another village. The result was catastrophically different. As they came out of the tree line, hands raised, a man appeared from a side path carrying a machete. No warning, no hesitation. He swung the blade in a clean arc that caught Martin across the shoulder and neck. Martin dropped instantly. Dengle ran, crashing back into jungle, the man's shouts fading behind him as he pushed deeper into undergrowth. He ran till his legs gave out, then crawled till darkness made moving impossible. From that moment, Dengle was alone. His weight had dropped to 98 pounds. His sense of time dissolved into a blur of crawling, drinking from mud puddles, hallucinating conversations with people who weren't there. He saw his mother. He saw his flight instructor. He saw Martin walking beside him, giving advice, then fading back into the trees. His body moved on autopilot, driven by something more basic than thought: an animal refusal to stop moving even when every logical part said survival was impossible. The jungle became both prison and salvation. Endless green in every direction, no landmarks, no sense of progress, only the constant push to keep crawling west, toward where Thailand might be, toward where rescue might exist, toward anything except the place where Martin's body lay, cooling in the dirt. On the 23rd day, Dengle heard the sound that had haunted his dreams for months: aircraft engines, the distinctive turbine whine of American jets, somewhere above the canopy. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled. He tried to shout, but his voice came out as a rasp. The sound faded, moving away, and despair washed over him like a physical weight. Then he heard it again, closer this time, circling, a search pattern. They were looking for something, maybe him. Dengle dragged himself toward what looked like a thin spot in the canopy, where a fallen tree had created a gap in the jungle ceiling. The effort took nearly an hour, crawling meters that would have taken seconds to walk. He found a flat section of bare earth and used a rock to scratch the letters into the dirt. SOS. The letters were rough, barely visible, but they were something. He pulled what was left of his parachute from where he'd kept it wrapped around his waist and waved the torn white fabric toward the sky. The physics of aerial search and rescue over triple canopy jungle make spotting a single person nearly impossible. From 1,500 feet, jungle looks like an unbroken green carpet. Individual trees blur into texture. A human body, even one waving white fabric, takes up maybe 2 square feet in millions of acres. The pilot of the Air Force O-1 bird dog that spotted Dengle said later he'd almost turned away, convinced the white flash was just sunlight on a stream. Only because he circled one more time, dropping to 500 feet against safety rules, did he see the skeletal figure and letters carved into earth. The radio call went out right away. A UH-1 Huey broke off from a mission 30 miles away, arriving in 20 minutes. Dengle watched it come down, rotors flattening the elephant grass, and felt something he hadn't felt in 7 months, certainty that he'd survive the next hour. The medics pulled him aboard, recoiling at his weight, at the leeches covering his legs, at the infected wounds that had turned his feet into swollen masses. 93 pounds. He collapsed onto the deck, barely conscious, while the helicopter climbed back toward safety. During the flight to the base at Da Nang, one of the medics asked about other prisoners. Dengle managed to explain the escape, the camp, the others. The medic's face changed. Intelligence reports had already confirmed Eugene de Bruin's recapture and execution 3 days after the breakout. Viet and Prasit had vanished into jungle and were presumed dead. Pisidi's fate was unknown. Of the 7 men who'd shared that bamboo prison, only Dengle made it out. The realization settled over him like a weight heavier than 7 months of captivity. His survival wasn't heroism, it was luck, chance, the random math of who turned left instead of right, who stumbled into a friendly village instead of a hostile one, who happened to crawl into a clearing at the exact moment a plane flew overhead. His skeletal frame, wrapped in blankets as the helicopter touched down at Da Nang, became something bigger than one man's story. It became proof that prisoners existed in camps all across Laos and Vietnam, held in conditions the Pentagon had officially denied. And it raised the question that would haunt Dengle the rest of his life. Why him and not the others?